and welcome back to the channel. It's a Lit Life with Miranda Reads, and today we have another monthly reading vlog. As always, I'm going to be ranking all of the books I read in June from the scale of outstanding, it means amazing, down to troll, which means it's the most awful of the awful. Let's get started. Alright, so the first two books I have are A Dragonfly and Amber, which was the second book of the Outlander series, which I started last month, and Voyager, which is the third book in the series that I read this month. For this series, we follow Claire. She's transported into the past by about 200 years. She falls in love with a Scottish Highlander from that era. What I've learned so far from reading this series is that it's a good. It is a darn good series. Each of these books are almost the equivalent of reading 2 to 3 normal books because they're around 800 to 900 pages. So they're a commitment. And honestly, when I try and look back and try and figure out, okay, why am I liking these so much, it's a little bit hard for me to tell because when you read these books, especially in close succession, they just feel like one really long book. But I would say it's a mixture of great characters, compelling story arcs, really great side plots and side characters, and just that extra bit of pizzazz that just, you know it when you read it, where you're just like, this is good stuff. So unsurprisingly, I would say this one's outstanding and the other one's outstanding as well. So the premise of Pandora's Lab is that the author takes a look at several different science discoveries and like how they impacted the world in a really negative way. And it's not just like, you know, atomic bomb, terrible. It's more like the hidden things that you don't really realize the impact until you're 30 years down the line and people are dying. So as a scientist, I did like this book, but I didn't love it. And when I try and pinpoint like why I didn't love this one, I feel like I don't know if it feels kind of like a little bit of like kind of reaching for conclusions, and I don't know, like it didn't wow me the way I had hoped it would be wowed. So I'm gonna keep this one down as acceptable. The Last Black Unicorn. Troll. I hated this book with like a burning passion. So this book follows Tiffany Haddish, and she talks about her life and all the things she's run into, how she's overcome this, how she's done this, and I like those parts about this book. However, she really crossed a line in here that I feel like, I don't know, like I guess that comedians can always cross lines and it's always like kind of like individual sense of humor, but I could not find like what she was writing about funny. In her early 20s, Tiffany is at an airport. That's her job, and one of her coworkers has a disability. He has a short arm, and he also, his vocalization, he can speak, but it's a little bit slurred, a little bit different from normal. So in this audiobook, the author actually does an accent for him the entire story, and this is probably like one of the longest chapters, or at least it felt like one of the longest chapters. She does this slurring, slow words accent. It seemed very similar to when Trump did that arm thing to the reporter. That's the vibe I got when she was doing this accent. It felt very mocking, it felt very disrespectful. But then she takes it a step further. She starts to date this guy in this book. And she talked about how she would make him hit it from behind because she couldn't stand to look at his face during sex. And then she ended up breaking up with him, and he ended up being so traumatized by this that he literally left his house, his job, and she has not seen him since. And then she kind of plays it off as like this was her disabled angel to teach her like humility or something like that. And there are other things that are in this story that she tries to make it sound funny, but to me, it really missed the mark. The craziest thing is when I go on Goodreads, so many people like this book, and I really kind of wonder, like, maybe it is just me, maybe I am being oversensitive, but at the same time, like, I really have a hard time enjoying this kind of humor. It's not for me when it seems like you're putting other people down or making them feel awful in an effort to make yourself sound funny. Anyway, I've talked long enough about this one. The next one is Such a Fun Age. There's one character who is white. She's kind of like a girl boss, created her own social media movement. And then we also follow her babysitter, who happens to be black. The babysitter has to take the kid like kind of late at night, and she goes to the supermarket. The babysitter gets accused of kidnapping the child, and that kind of starts the ball rolling for a lot of events that talk about race and injustices. To be honest, I really don't know how I feel about this book. I really can't decide, like, is this book treating racism with kid gloves where they're given very easy scenarios where you as the reader really know like what to do in these situations because the characters make it very obvious? Or is it a lot more nuanced than that and I'm just not picking up on it? I don't know, I think I'm gonna have to think on this one a little bit more, but right now I'm gonna keep it down as acceptable because like it was an okay read for me. I just was expecting to be like wowed and blown away just given on how many people have read this on Goodreads, and I'm kind of disappointed that I'm not. Next one is Hidden Figures. I did see the movie first, which, sorry, but I think this is a really interesting book on its own. I think the movie does a better job of creating like a storyline behind it, and this one is more of like a chronicle of the history, but at the same time, like, I did really enjoy it. So Hidden Figures talks about the black mathematicians, especially the black female mathematicians, that were at the core of our ability as a nation to be able for flight. That sentence got away from me. But they did a lot of calculations behind aircrafts and spacecraft, and they ended up helping getting people up into space. But the actual writing itself was really good, and I would say this one definitely exceeded expectations. I really enjoyed reading it. So A Wolf Called Wander is actually a real life story. There was a young wolf pup and his entire family was scattered, and he travels all the way across the US to find himself a new mate. This one was a really sweet story. I would say overall this was a very enjoyable read. It's very quick but very enjoyable. And I was dropping off books at my little free library and I found the Paddington Treasury. And I've actually never read this one and I've always kind of been curious, so I did. And it is super duper cute. It's all about this little bear named Paddington. He gets left at the Paddington station and he gets adopted by a family, and he goes through all kinds of hijinks and misadventures like eating marmalade, very soapy baths, and then possibly even meeting the Queen. The illustrations are lovely, the story is gorgeous, and honestly it's outstanding overall. Then I have Women in Science. Essentially this book goes through 50 women scientists and their contributions to the world. And I really liked just hearing about the huge breadth of scientists, mathematicians, physicists, astrologists, radiologists, etc. There was a scientist for everything, and I really appreciated that. I did listen to the audiobook and that was okay, but I feel like the experience would have been enhanced by reading the actual book because the book has all kinds of gorgeous pictures, so oh well. That being said, I would say outstanding because it is a lovely, lovely take on that. Gossamer. In this one we follow Littlest? I can't quite remember her name, but she is definitely called Little-ish, maybe, something like that. But she is a dream fairy. And what she has to do is she has to learn how to protect humans' dreams, how to give them good dreams, and how to guard them against the nightmares. They work to protect a human woman. This human woman decides to foster a young boy, and he is plagued by the nightmares, and Little has to find a way to protect him. I think this one was a really nice story, especially as I'm older and I'm able to appreciate a bit more of the nuance. And the next one I have is Dune. So the concept of this one is it's very outer space, very far future. We follow Paul, his mother, and his father. His mother has like these psychic abilities. Paul has some as well. And they're going to this planet where it's essentially a giant desert wasteland, and on this planet they produce this spice, and it's essentially like this drug that allows you to become like extra smart and be able to pilot special spaceships and that kind of stuff. So this book to me sounds really exciting. I loved the giant worms that were like bigger than houses, bigger than buses, bigger than football fields, that would live among the dunes and try and kill people if they come too close, well, depending on what they have with them. And I loved learning about the different planet, the different lifestyles, the different limitations that come from living on a desert planet like this. And this book was very politics and political intrigue, and if I do this, then this duke will do this, and then this baron will have to do this. And to me, that every time I read that, like my attention span went back and back and back. Yeah, it just was not for me. So right now, I would say it's kind of between poor and dreadful. I'm going to put it down as poor because I did really love the planetary stuff, and that was what kind of saved it for me. I honestly don't know if I want to continue with the series, if it's going to be more politics like this. I have is Today Will Be Different by Maria Semple. And if you remember last month, I read her Where'd You Go, Bernadette, which was one of my favorite books of all time, and I just love it. So Today Will Be Different is centered in the same town, so it's in Seattle, but like also the same world, set a little bit after the events of book 1, and we follow a slightly neurotic mom who is also a cartoonist as she takes her child with her across Seattle, and they kind of go on this whirlwind adventure. It felt like it was a little too close to the first book in terms of characterization, and it also just didn't hit me. Like the first book had me laughing out loud, and this one I'm not even entirely sure why it didn't work as well. But I would probably put this one down as poor. And the last couple of books are a couple of Julia Quinn ones. This is from the Bridgertons series, and as you know, I'm trying to work my way through it, but I'm also cheap, so I didn't buy the books. I'm waiting for them to come from the library, but I was lucky enough to get 2 of them from the library this week. The first one is When He Was Wicked, and the second one is It's in His Kiss. For the Bridgerton series, each book follows one of the Bridgerton siblings as they fall in love. So the first one began with Daphne, who was the 4th oldest. You can tell because her name begins with a D. And then we went through all kinds of other siblings, and these last 2 ones are about Francesca for book 6 and then Hyacinth for book 7. So the issue I am running into with these is that they're really starting to feel like more of the same. I just really wish that the author would break the mold for these characters. It feels like she has a formula at this point. We'd have like the very innocent girl who is also really kind of spunky for her time, and yet she's not spunky enough to actually go against the guy. And then we have like the deeply brooding guy who's always very muscular. He's quick to anger or suppress his temper, and then they clash, and they end up getting together. So that being said, I would say for When He Was Wicked, it is acceptable. I mean, like, it's not wowing me, but it wasn't terrible either. And then It's in His Kiss. I'm currently halfway through that one, and that one's kind of exceeding expectations. I was really excited for Hyacinth because she was one of my favorite side characters, and it's going okay right now. I think the guy she's gonna probably be paired with, Gareth, he just feels like every other guy in one of these Quinn books, but like Hyacinth is still pretty good, I think. That's it. That is my June 2021 reading vlog. I really enjoy doing these, and I want to just thank you for joining me.